What's up, investors and people of Reddit, it's the Russian Dude, and this is your daily update on Russian-Ukrainian war as of Monday, April 11th. And this time, as always, I have two major stories to talk about with you today. The first one is the out-of-the-blue statement of the president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, that Russia is getting ready for the final push against every Ukrainian city. Even some Russian government officials are not exactly sure what he meant, so make sure to stay for that part of the video. And second is the establishment of yellow level of terrorism threat in the south of Russia. The first two questions that might come into your head are, is it the counterattack of Ukraine or is it the revenge of some individuals? So stay tuned for this part of the video as well. I will also briefly present some other events and news that happened today. The president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, which is by the way a republic in Russia, mentioned that Russia is getting ready for one more push on every Ukrainian city. He said that this information came to him directly from Vladimir Putin himself. But some government officials of Russia, including Dmitry Peskov, who is the press secretary of Russia, basically the right hand of Putin, said that he is not exactly sure what Ramzan Kadyrov means. Dmitry Peskov says that such orders can only come directly from the Ministry of Defense of Russia. And just to give you a little bit more understanding on what exactly is happening, here is the current condition of this so-called military operation in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defense of Russia mentions that the first stage of this operation is completed successfully. And in the meantime, there are no clear definitions on what successfully in this case means. The second stage of this operation was to allegedly liberate the Donetsk and Lugansk regions. And that is basically as much as we, regular Russians, know about the current condition of so-called military operation. Which in return brings us back to this statement that Ramzan Kadyrov made about advancement on every Ukrainian city, which as you can see was never a part of any of the stages of this so-called military operation, therefore no one knows where this came from. In this video we can see a Ukrainian soldier who is recording a video and suddenly artillery strikes became very close to him. In this video we can see what can potentially happen if you are driving with a Russian flag through Ukrainian protests. And by the way, if you like this style of daily news reporting, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Since the beginning of this so-called military operation, NATO has been expanding its military presence on eastern parts of Europe. Just to give you a basic idea, NATO has approximately 40,000 soldiers who are on standby next to Russian border. And this number increased just from 4,000 just a couple of months ago. In this video we can see a woman who is doing an individual protest holding a picture of white pigeons, which are a symbol of peace. But it did not prevent from her being detained, because according to the police she was protesting against the war. In this video we can see the police detaining people who are protesting the war by supporting Ukraine next to Russian consulate general in Kazakhstan. And just as a reminder, Kazakhstan was not directly supporting Russia, neither Ukraine in this conflict. In this video we can see allegedly Ukrainian soldiers being shot at point blank by a tank. And there are many different versions about the origins of this video. Some people say that it is plain and simple, these were Ukrainian soldiers and the tank was Russian. Other people said that these were also Ukrainian soldiers who were standing next to destroyed Russian military vehicles, and the tank was also Ukrainian. And the reason why would a Ukrainian tank shoot at its own Ukrainian soldiers was because they mistakenly thought that these were Russian soldiers. In this video we can see the allegedly captured Ukrainian intelligence officer giving out the positions of Ukrainian forces to Russian soldiers, though this video was very quickly recognized as fake by some Ukrainian locals. They're saying that this allegedly Ukrainian intelligence officer in fact is a homeless who lives next to Ukrainian church. And to make this matter even worse and even more ridiculous, this propagandistic fake video was showing that this guy has Ukrainian nationalistic tattoos, which were actually just made with a marker 5 minutes before recording this video. And one of the tattoos that we were able to see just a couple of seconds ago was a tattoo of Batman. And in this video we can see the allegedly Russian military vehicles being destroyed by Ukrainian army. The yellow level of terroristic threat was established earlier today in Bryansk and Voronezh Oblast in the territory of Russia. Later, the same level of threat was established in the north of Crimea Peninsula. However, yellow level is not as bad as red level, which is considered to be critical. But nevertheless, it still gives some restrictions and recommendations to residents. Specifically, the residents are recommended to abstain from visiting places where there can be potentially many people, such as for example train stations and malls. Second, people must carry their identification documents, such as for example passports, in case the police wants to identify them. Next, in case people do go outside and visit different places, they need to locate emergency exits. And finally, in case you see some suspicious people or vehicles, you should immediately report to the police. This whole thing started because one person from the Federal Security Service of Russia mentioned that he has the information that there is going to be many terroristic acts on the territory of Russia. He also mentioned that the targets gonna be probably residential buildings to make as many casualties as possible. At this very moment it is still uncertain whether this information is fake or not, but citizens are getting prepared. Today Ukraine has received the European Union membership questionnaire, which brings this country one step closer towards becoming the official partner of the European Union. It is expected that Ukraine will be granted a candidate status in June of this year. In this video we can see the army of Ukraine destroying allegedly Russian tank. And in this video you can see a very lucky driver from Kharkiv, Ukraine, who was dangerously close to artillery strikes. The representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Maria Zakharova, mentioned literally that YouTube has signed its own death sentence. This happened after YouTube banned the YouTube channel of Russian parliament. She also mentioned that all Russian creators must transfer their content to Russian social medias as soon as possible. And in response to that, some Russian software developers already created a program which allows you to transfer all your videos from YouTube to Russian social media called Vkontakte, which is the equivalent of Facebook. In this picture you can see the types of fossil fuels that are used as main sources of energy. And it is pretty clear that gas, oil and coal are three main types, which basically means that if Western countries put a ban on Russian energy sources, specifically gas, oil and coal, this can negatively impact the price for these fossil fuels, which in return will make it extremely expensive for regular citizens to pay for their utilities. But at the same time, it is pretty easy to understand this hard decision, because buying these fossil fuels from Russia will only finance the military operation in Ukraine. The president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, was asking every democratic country to ban the imports of Russian oil. He said that selling oil is one of the biggest things that brings money inside Russia, which allows them to continue this so-called military operation. Besides that, some Russian oligarchs always have their hands inside these transactions, and basically that's how they became oligarchs, which basically means as soon as Russian oil is banned and this cash flow is reduced, this is when they finally start to get worried. In this picture you can see the approximate losses of the Russian army estimated by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. According to this, Russia has lost approximately 19,100 soldiers, 705 tanks and 151 planes. And if you want to see more details, feel free to pause this video. The representatives of Herford region in Germany mentioned that they will stop issuing license plates that contain Z letter. And the reason why would they do it is so that people do not associate these cars that they support Russian operation. As of today, Russia has defaulted on its foreign debt. Default simply means that Russia was not able to repay its international creditors. And according to Russian side, they were able to do these payments. It is just that America has frozen Russian reserves in US banks. As a result of this, Russia offered to repay its debt in Russian rubles, but Western countries refused this option. So as a result, Russia is considered to be at default at this very moment, but it is given a grace period of 30 days to finalize the payments. And in case Russia will not be able to repay its international creditors until May 4th, then the default will be recognized officially. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, has came to Ukraine unannounced to meet the President Zelensky. The details of these negotiations were not released to the press, but two major points were achieved during this talk. The first one is that the United Kingdom will continue to support Ukraine in this war, and second is that the United Kingdom will continue to push sanctions against Russia. The representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, mentioned that the Union is giving additional 500 million euros to Ukraine. He also mentioned for the very first time in the history of the European Union that this war will be won on the battlefield and not through diplomatic means, which in my unfortunate understanding means that the European Union is no longer considering a peaceful resolution on Ukraine. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency has banned 21 Russian airline companies. And the reason why would they do this? It is because the flight insurance was taken away by the insurance companies because these Russian airline companies continued to fly technically illegally. So as a result, we have very few flights coming into Russia and very limited flights happening inside and outside of Russia, which brings the Iron Curtain on Russia closer every single day. Last week, several Russian soldiers were reported having the symptoms of radioactive sickness because they were sitting inside radioactive trenches which were dug in the territory of Chernobyl. And I mean, at this very moment, it is practically very few people on Earth who still do not know what happened in Chernobyl in 1986. So here are two potential reasons why would they even touch radioactive soil. The first one is that this was a direct order from their officers, which they couldn't disobey. And the second one, which is less realistic, it is because they actually didn't know that this was a radioactive place. But in this picture we can see a map which theoretically can support the second point of view, because allegedly this map is from 1985, which was before the Chernobyl disaster, which basically means that there was no indications that anything was radioactive. Today, the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, mentioned that India and China might become next two country guarantors for Ukraine, and countries guarantors are those countries which are supposed to help Ukraine in case there is a military intervention. The representatives from North Korea mentioned that they support Russia. I mean, at this very moment, these are practically two similar countries in terms of international involvement. North Korea also mentioned that Western countries will be the only ones who will be suffering the consequences of sanctions against Russia. The Ukrainian parliament has registered a law today which says that all able-bodied Ukrainian men who left the country during this war are now considered criminals unless they return within 15 days. And if they decide not to return and continue hiding outside of Ukraine, they are facing up to 10 years of jail time. Around 4.5 million people have left Ukraine since the beginning of this so-called military operation, and the vast majority of people goes towards Poland, which received approximately 2.6 million refugees. The Russian currency ruble has been strengthening itself against US dollar last week. Just a quick reminder, at the very peak for $1, people were ready to give approximately 140 Russian rubles, and at the very bottom the exchange rate was approximately 71 rubles per US dollar. Such rapid appreciation in the value of Russian ruble was mainly thanks to interventions by the Central Bank of Russia, but it was pretty obvious that such economic incentives were unsustainable in long term. Specifically, all the way until this Monday, April 11th, if Russians wanted to buy US dollar or European euros, they had to pay up to 20% fee, which in most cases made no financial sense to do this. For this reason, there was almost no demand for dollars or euros. But as of this Monday, you no longer need to pay this commission. And just like I estimated in my Friday's video, this can potentially start devaluating Russian ruble once again. And in this very picture, we basically can see the result. As soon as the foreign exchange has opened, the Russian ruble has lost approximately 6.8% in its relation to US dollar. Last month, Meta, which includes Instagram, made a very controversial decision to allow sending death threats to Russian soldiers. And I honestly have no idea how this is gonna help to end the war, because obviously, as we all know, the solution to violence is even more violence. But as of today, the representatives of Meta announced that they're extending their decision to allow sending death threats against Russian all the way until the end of April. In this video, we can see the city of Rubezhne, Ukraine, where nitric acid depot was on fire. It has been reported that the Russian army was bombing these nitric acid containers, and this is basically the result. Nitric acid is considered to be a biological weapon, therefore this incident might have severe consequences. But ironically, the wind was pushing this poisonous cloud towards Russian territory. Thank you so much for your attention, stay safe, and see you tomorrow.